Hi there everybody, it's Chef Martin in the demo kitchen at ThermoWorks, and today we're going to do a braised brisket. Here at ThermoWorks, we obviously love barbecue, and we love brisket for barbecue, and we love doing brisket in all sorts of ways. But there's one way that we haven't done brisket for you on video, and that is a braised brisket. And I love a deep, rich braised brisket. They're so tasty, they're so tender, and they're really very easy to make. So today I'm going to walk you through the steps to do that. We're going to talk about the temperatures, the thermometers you need, and just how to get the most flavor into a brisket that you possibly can. So I have here about a 5.5, 6 pound brisket. This is a full brisket. It's just not the big mega packer briskets that we use for barbecue that are 15, 16, 20 pounds. This will take a lot less time to cook, obviously. It's also a lot more easy to fit into like an oven and into my roasting pan here. So with this brisket, first we're going to do a little bit of a trimming, and then we're going to brown it up with some salt and pepper, and we'll move on from there. So let's take a look at this. I'm just going to take a little bit of this fat cap off here, just kind of the crest of it, so it isn't too thick in some places. We'll salt and pepper both sides of the brisket. I put a couple tablespoons of olive oil into my roasting pan and heat it up until it's quite hot over medium-high heat. I'm going to put the brisket in here and brown it on both sides. It's going to take a few minutes per side, probably about 5 minutes per side to get it nice and brown so we get that flavor. We want all those beefy bits in the bottom. Then we're going to take it out of the pan. So let's get it in there. So I've got 2 pounds of regular yellow onions here. We're going to slice these up thinly. This is the white part of 1 leek. We're going to just slice that up thinly too. We'll slice up a ½ pound of celery. And 1 pound of carrots. Looking at our brisket, we can see that's lovely and brown. So we're going to turn that over and cook the other side. I also have 8 ounces of mushrooms that I'm going to slice up. And then to this, we're going to add a small bunch of parsley, a couple of bay leaves, and about 4 large sprigs of thyme. And when you look at this gigantic heap of aromatic vegetables and all that's going on here, you can see why this brisket will get so much flavor in it. All these juices are going to cook together. They're all going to be braising in there with the beef, and it just makes this smell and this flavor that it's second to none, really. So I can't wait to get these sauteing in there. Let's check the beef and see how it's doing. Our brisket is good. We've got a lot of brown on there. On both sides, you can see that second side there. And we're going to just take that out and set this on a sheet tray pan over here. And we're going to take our vegetables, we're going to put all of our vegetables in here with the beef brown bits, and we're going to use all that flavor. We're not going to wipe that out or anything. There's obviously some smoke going on, that's okay. So we're just going to start shoveling all of these vegetables in here. So I've got the heat turned back up to relatively high, I'm not on full high. There's fat in there that rendered out of the brisket. It is a fatty cut after all. And there's still some oil. If I find this is a little too dry, I may add a little bit more olive oil in a minute. But I'm going to just move these around and try to get things softened for sure. I would like a little bit of color on them, but I'm not going to try to caramelize this or anything like that. But a little bit of color on the edges and things is going to be just great. All right, this is looking really good. A lot of the liquid is dried out of the bottom that the vegetables have left off. They're getting there's little bits of brown on here. It smells Amazing. We're going to add a couple tablespoons of tomato paste to this. That'll give us richness in some more umami flavor, some nice deep rich flavor. So we're just going to kind of stir that in here and cook that with the vegetables for a couple more minutes. I can feel now that some of the veggies are starting to stick to the bottom of the pan, and that's a good indication that we are where we need to be. So I'm going to take 1 cup of red wine, and we're going to deglaze the pan with this. Scrape up any bits that haven't cooked off yet from the sides, the bottom, and just get that all in there. I'm going to kill the heat on that. So what we have here is basically our braising liquid. There's not that much liquid there from the wine, but we don't need that much liquid. All these vegetables are basically going to count as liquid because they're going to drop so much of themselves out in the heat, and the brisket itself is going to drop a lot of liquid into this. So we're going to end up with probably easily 3/4 of an inch to an inch of liquid in here when we're done, if not more. The wine that I used, you don't need to use fancy wine, but I would recommend using drinking wine. Bottles of cooking wine are very high in salt and they really taste like nothing good. Anyways, just buy a cheap bottle or box of wine for this. You can use beef stock, chicken stock, you can use water if you need to for the liquid. You just want about a cup of liquid that you're going to put into here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our beef and we're going to make a little bed for it here. And we're going to nestle that beef right down in here. With the meat nestled in the veggies and the wine in there and everything browned and delicious, it's just about time to put this in the oven. I want to talk really quickly about what's going to happen there. So brisket is a really tough cut of meat. It's got a lot of collagen in it. If you just cook it until it's just done, it'll be way too tough to eat. We need to give that collagen the chance to break down into gelatin. That doesn't happen until above 175 degrees. And really, for a piece of meat this size, it's this tough, we want to go for about 203 degrees. Now, you can poke that over and over again and stick your finger in the oven and whatever, or you could use a thermometer. And obviously, that's what I recommend. I'll be using the Chef Alarm thermometer, and I'll be using this waterproof needle probe. I'll use this because there's going to be a high steam environment when we cover this, and it's just a little bit better with all that steam to have a waterproof probe. So I'm going to stick that in here, like so. And when this reaches 203 degrees, we're going to give it a half an hour at 203 degrees. Collagen breakdown is a function of both time and temperature, and giving it that time at that temperature for everything to break down rapidly will give us a more tender brisket. The oven is going to be set at 300 degrees. It's a nice braising temperature. So I'm going to cover this with some foil as tightly as I can around the edges. We'll stick it in the oven and we'll let it go. It's been 3 hours and 50 minutes and our alarm just went off on the Chef Alarm at 203 degrees. I'm going to check the brisket with a ThermoPen Mark IV to see if I've even placed the probe in the right place. It's easy to not get the probe in the thermal center. We want the lowest temperature that we see to be 203 degrees. Some higher temperatures will be okay. So we're just going to check that. If we're at 203, we're going to set the timer for 30 minutes and let it keep going for that much time and take it out. If we're below 203, I'm going to move the probe so that we reflect that new temperature on the Chef Alarm, and we'll let it keep going until we hit 203, and then it'll go another half hour beyond that. So let's check it out. All right, now you could probe directly through the foil. If you are going to lift it up, be sure that you watch. There's a lot of steam that's going to come out of there. Oh, and we have amazing broth in here. So I'm going to just lift that up and probe from here. So you can see anything below 203. So I've got some high 202s, some 201s, looks like some 200s maybe. I'm going to just kind of move that over there. There we go. That's reflecting a more accurate temperature. We'll let this keep going. When we hit 203 again, we'll come back and check it some more. Our Chef Alarm has gone off again, and we've checked the temperature. We're at 203. So I'm going to set this timer, the time stick, for 30 minutes. And we're gonna let it just continue to dissolve the collagen and break down that connective tissue in there for 30 minutes. When it comes out, it's gonna be nice and tender. And we'll talk about what happens at that point when we get there. But for now, 30 more minutes. We let this go for a half an hour after we reach 203 degrees. And I want to note that about halfway in, about a couple hours into the cooking, I got in there and I flipped it over once. So we start out with the fat cap on top. Now the fat cap is on the bottom. There's going to be a lot of juice in here, so let's take a look. Again, always be careful when you take the foil off, because there's going to be some steam that kind of jumps out of there. So watch that. Don't burn your knuckles. There we go. When I probe this with the ThermoPen, it's just feels like there's almost nothing there. It feels like butter in most of the places. There might be a spot or two that's a little bit tough. We're going to talk about how to fix that. So I'm going to get this out of here. You can see also, by the way, it's shrunk a lot. It was the full size of the pan, basically. It's shrunk down by a couple inches on each side there. We're going to take this out and talk about what happens next. And look, just look at all this goodness. All this liquid came out of the vegetables, out of the beef. There's a lot of fat on there. We can separate that out or not. The traditional method is to slice this as you're going to serve it and put that back in the sauce. And you can then cool that to room temperature in the sauce and put it in the fridge overnight, reheat it just till it's warm tomorrow, and it's going to be incredible. But you really, the idea is just to leave it in there for another half hour right now before we eat it. I'm going to cut open, see how tender it is, and then I might just eat it. So we'll see. Now, just looking at this, you can see it's very tender. It falls right apart. It looks a little dry. By putting it back in the liquid, it's going to absorb some of that juice. That juice is going to permeate it and become part of the meat once again. So that's one of the reasons why you do it that way. Because brisket, I mean, the flat of the brisket doesn't have that much fat in it all the time. So we're just going to cut this up. Some nice thick slices. And then we're going to layer those back into the juice and let them sit. Braised brisket is so full of flavor. It's so delicious. Those flavors of all those onions and all those carrots and mushrooms, and it's just redolent of herbs and things like that. They go into the meat so deeply when you braise it like this. Every bite is just packed with that flavor. And we know that we're at a good temperature. We know we're at the right place on it because we had the probe in it in the oven. We got to 203 degrees and we let that collagen break down. I recommend trying this. You can do it. It's super easy. Until next time, this is Chef Martin from ThermoWorks. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you've seen, hit the like button. We'd really appreciate it. Happy cooking.